going on, everybody? Welcome back to Frosty Sports here for the Meltdown, episode 9, our podcast with me, Llama 77, and that guy over there, your boy Q. And Q, how are we doing this afternoon?
Yo, what it do? What it do? We've done 9 of these things. Well, we've done 8 of these things. We're starting to do number 9. It's kind of crazy to think about. I'm doing good though, man. We're coming down the home stretch of the end of the school year for the high school league that you and I work, which means my schedule will finally start opening up. Maybe I can actually do some content on my page. But we've got a lot of esports going on, man. RLCS qualifier 4 right around the corner. VCT Super Week for America's going on now. We've got ALGS LAN going to be started by the time we get to sit down and release another one of these episodes too. So really good time of year, man.
We
How you
always
been?
said it. Oh, I've been good. I've been very good. Like you said, been very busy, been filling up my schedule. We're moving in for my coaching in towards our regionals and preparing for the grand finals. So lots of exciting stuff going on. But, as you always said, it's a good time to be an esports fan. So much going on. And I think we got to start with everything we've always been starting with, RLCS.
I think it's the best place to start. I mean, that's what we do the most and have a lot of fun with over here at Frost. And let's talk about RLCS, obviously qualifier 4 being around the corner last week, Llama. You and I kind of talked about some rumors. We saw Moist dropping their remaining of their roster. And there was rumors that they might be coming over to North America. You and I kind of talked about it quite a bit last episode. And looks like we were right.
We were correct. We definitely were. And honestly, it's a great pickup because they get to pick up our boy, 5UP, man. This guy started in the weeklies, grinded him out, made a name for himself, joined the Pirates on a boat squad, and then to get picked up by such a big organization, I feel like, it's a big step forward, but, it's one that I think all of us expected. We've been seeing his growth over so many months and years.
Yeah, I gotta say, as one, a 5UP fan, two, a fan of just what Moist is doing as like a content creator, like led org, seeing those two kind of coming together, a really cool story. Moist now coming to NA in RLCS, the way that we've seen them doing in ALGS as well. Super excited, man. I'm gonna be really excited, especially because like Moist picks up a roster that's technically in the running, right? You got yourself, they're a team that looked like they had the potential to maybe even go to land number 2, maybe even have a good enough of a split to earn themselves a world spot as well. So I'm going to be really excited to see what this team does. They've already at least earned themselves to the main event for qualifier 4. So that's the good news.
That is very true. A lot of the new teams, a lot of the pickups have actually made that top 16 as we haven't had the switch stage go through just yet, but I'm really excited. I think there's going to be some banger matchups, like you said, increased points for split number 2, but there are, like we talked about last week, some teams that are a little bit more safe in G2, so it'll be interesting to see how they play, and it's a little bit more interesting that actually Moist is coming in as that kind of 8 seed break point. So they're playing NRG. I think that's kind of like a crazy first matchup with how volatile energy can be. And again, it's just going to be so many exciting matchups.
Yeah, one, interesting to see NRG back into the Swiss stage as well, right? Back into the main event. You always love to see that. But also what I was excited to see, the homies over at Cloverity, not just only seeing them because, we work with them from time to time. I always love to see the homies winning. But seeing the roster that they put together. Naya, who had originally been dropped, what was that, 3 weeks ago, right?
Yep.
It's not too long ago. Joins the duo from Nightblood Gaming, joins JD and Exorari. Is that right? Exorari?
Yeah.
Exorari. They joined and they formed up cold, did a couple of the weeklies, and then picked up by Cloverity, and they made Swiss. They kind of were one of the, I would probably say, the lesser, more underdog teams, I would say, of making top 16, but they did it. And I would say, as far as for them, it is going to be a challenge off rip because they do get G2 in the first round, but we'll see for the rest of Swiss from there.
All I've been seeing though on my timeline though, Q, is just, oh, they are the people to take down G2. Like Nightya's
Imagine,
gonna
though.
do it. I mean,
Oh,
like we said, G2 may be coming in, already locked in their spot. We'll see how they'll be playing. But yeah, I was scrolling through Nightya's tweets, and Liquipedia had actually posted it's the first time for all 3 of these players to make a main event. So a fresh roster to make it here for themselves. And, they've got a really tough opponent in that number 1 CG2. But we talk about those other roster pickups. You talk about Cloud9 as well. They made the Swiss stage too.
yeah, Cloud9 also making it with Zanil, Percy, Lion Blaze. You love to see that. Again, another roster that's, still a little more fresh when you talk about, experience and stuff. And I love to kind of see, like, I don't want to say it's a changing the guard just yet, because I don't think that's fair. I think when you still look at the top. It's still a lot of the veteran players, but we are starting to see these young kids that are in the wing and getting a lot better, looking more crisp. I feel like this offseason, we just might kind of see that mixing of the guard that we talked about potentially kind of happening during the break this between the splits here. But also I think the big thing you talk about is some of these other teams that didn't make it, right?
Yeah.
When you look at teams like Dignitas, who are originally in the talks of maybe they could have been one of the last two that went to land. Now you don't make Swiss. This is the first time Arsenal hasn't been to a main event for like seasons
Ever. Yeah.
6, season 7, something like that. Like that's quite a run and all. And unfortunately, no Arsenal to start off Swiss stage. That's tough.
It's a little bit sad. Like you said, it's been a while since we haven't seen Arsenal in one of those main events. But you talk about kind of that new guard coming in. We've also got three unsigned rosters that actually
Yep.
made it towards the Swiss stage: Snowmen, Cheers, and Nether Canada. Yeah, that's a great name. But
Man,
yeah,
it's but they got Dawn, Justice, and Taroko, two or three players that we know quite a bit of. Again, I feel like we are even seeing it across in some other regions too. Like obviously last year the biggest story was in the EU, right? Zen comes in and has a stranglehold on the region, but we are seeing new players popping up across the globe and really being able to have some good runs. I would love to see one of these rookie teams put one together. If the snowmen do it though, we are gonna have to have them get like an actual logo and
yeah,
not one that looks like it's made in paint. But you know what, man, for a first event for this squad, I'm gonna be excited to see how it goes. Swiss is gonna be interesting just because of the fact you have some interesting names in. I mean, again, Cloverity, does have G2. You also have
yeah.
Cheers, one of those teams that you talked about, gonna have Gen G. So that 0-1 bracket could actually send some teams up into the 1-1 that like we've never seen before. So it should be fun.
Should be lots of fun. And also, when you think about like even the teams that are signed, like Cloud9 still kind of a relatively new roster. You talk
Yeah.
about TSM, like they picked up Wavy, they picked up the squad there. So I feel like for some of these top teams, the pressure is on now more than ever to try and, perform on that highest stage. And the question is, again, you have teams like G2, like Gen G that probably already have secured their spot. We don't think they're not gonna play, like, horrible, but, like, are they gonna be, a little bit more laid back?
I think they're at least probably top 4 at minimum, right?
Okay.
Maybe you catch them slipping after that, but I think they're at least getting top 4. My question to you, though, in return, Llama, would be what was the one team looking at the Swiss bracket for you that you're like, maybe they haven't performed thus far this year? Whether it's a team like TSM who's been close,
Yeah.
or is it a new team like a Deleted XD, a Cloverity that you think turns up and makes a noise?
I honestly think it's the organizations that we saw that are not Gen G and, G2 that, like, you're talking about, like, Luminosity, OG, yes, they kind of were up there in the running, but at the same time, like, you're not at the total point value that they are. You still
Right.
have a chance to, go towards the next major, sure, but, like, you still have to really perform well, and the pressure, like we said, is on now more than ever when you're facing, like, these trap games to start yourself off. For like OG, you got Deleted XD. For TSM, you got Snowman. For Luminosity, you've got that squad that I can't pronounce their name, the Netherland America, yeah, whatever it's called. But
It's
these
what
are top
Netherlands,
games. Like you're
America,
supposed to
and
win these ones.
Canada all together is what it is.
Yes, yes,
Or is that right? Netherlands, America, Canada,
yes,
however
yes.
you put that three all thing together. But so Llama, if you had to pick one squad that you would say no one's really expecting to pop off in qualifier number 4 of these top 16 teams that are in Swiss, give me one team that's going to turn some heads. Who would it be?
I guess that I think it's the team I'm wearing the shirt of. I think it's Cloud9, to be honest. I think that a lot of people seeing like this roster got picked up as one of the last roster pickups before the Regional 4 started. That we were talking
Mhm.
like if you're looking down the list of the people with RLCS points, like you got to go down to number 10, 11, 12 to try and find that roster. So, to pick up the Omelet squad, I think they have a ton of potential and they bear the Cloud9 name, but at the same time, I think a lot of people are doubting that they won't find success.
I think it was funny because last week we talked about the whole Moist pickup, right? And then it was between the time that we recorded and then the episode released that the Cloud9 squad picked up Omelet. And I think that pretty well for me, like, solidified that Moist was, picking up the Poab squad because you figure if you're
Yeah.
Cloud9, if you don't pick up Poab, it's because they're already picked up and going to a bigger org. So that kind of makes sense. But yeah, Swiss is going to be fun to watch this weekend. Before you guys happen to tune in over in NA, come hang out with your boy over on the SSA broadcast. We're starting up, I think it's like 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. As far as all 3 days. So feel free to come over and hang out with your boy. Shameless plug. But yeah, we'll kind of break down and talk about qualifier for next week. I do want to talk a little bit about VCT though, before we move into the fun stuff that we have at the end. Um, so last week we talked about Super Week starting this week, and obviously we're recording this thing before Super Week is completely wrapped up, but we do have a decent chunk of our games for Super Week, basically all with the last two, which are going to be today, G2 and Leviathan and Crew versus Loud. So we've had 4 of the 5 days. Kind of want to get your thoughts on one Super Week so far, and then we'll talk a little bit more as far as NA here in just an extra second. But what's your kind of your first thoughts this last week?
There were a ton of good games. That was my first thought. A lot of really good Valorant for sure. I think looking at specifically like the Americas, I think the biggest kind of surprise to me was actually the Cloud9 loss, especially it being a 0-2 towards 100 Thieves. But I think, like I said, there were a lot of really good games. And kind of as we have written in our notes here, there's a chance that both of our two top teams from the previous one in Loud and Sentinels might miss that next big event.
Yeah, I think one of the big things for me so far this week, one was seeing the Leviathan NRG game, seeing
Yeah.
Lev kind of have a nice little bounce back. People had kind of the questions after they beat Sen. Was it more about Sen kind of having a fall off, or was Lev actually for real? So for them to show up in 2-0 NRG, I think for me, especially when Sen started off the top of the week by bouncing back and 2-0ing. Oh, I thought they 2-0 Loud. It was MRBR. Never mind.
Yeah.
Don't mind me. Um, but then I think the other thing for me, was EG. Are they for like, you can't ask yet if they're for real, still sitting at 1 and
One
3,
and three.
but to take down Sentinels, like, Potter kinda getting to talk her stuff yesterday, which was really fun to watch.
I think they have a really good coaching staff. I think they have a good structure. I just feel like the players need a little bit more time to build that cohesion. They showed it though in this match in the 1-2 victory over Sentinels. And it's again another match where you feel like Sentinels, you're facing against the 0-3 Evil Geniuses. We even talked about that on the podcast last week. We're like, no, this isn't really a match to watch. Like, surely
Right.
Sentinels is gonna win it. So I feel like Sentinels, like the alarm bells have to be ringing. Like you are again, you're the world champions, and it is kind of that land fever of you didn't have as much practice time, you got right back in the swing of it, but at the same time, you're the world champions. Like,
So it's interesting that you bring up the whole not having enough time thing, right? Because I actually saw this morning. And luckily I saw it before I went to the gym because I kind of pondered on it while I was lifting and stuff, and more, not so much lifting, but like the walk to and from. But Brennan, and it's this tweet, and luckily I know that our producer will put it up whenever we go and do like the big live video. But I've seen enough to know that almost none of the Madrid teams are making it to Shanghai. This year's turnaround from Masters to Stage One play is way too tight for any competitive team to, one, get adequate rest, and two, improve upon their map pool and innovate, sorry. Um, it seems to me, one, I think at face value, I have to agree a lot. I did think that the turnaround was a little
yeah,
bit too much. I think especially when you look at how little Valorant is getting played this year, like for the competitive season, I didn't understand why you would have such a short break, right? And especially the rest thing, I think that's also a very important point, especially because when you look at the fact that these, 5, 6 weeks where they're in season, it's a pretty rigorous time for these
yeah,
players. So having that rest, especially for teams that are traveling to and from, very important, right? At the same time, it seems to mostly be an America's problem. Like, when you look
yeah,
at some of the other regions, I mean, let's look at, for instance, in the Pacific, right? In Pacific, you've got Gen G's at the top of their bracket, and then PRX just needs to win one more game, and they should be able to
true.
do that, and they're also in as far as to the playoffs, right? In EMEA, I would say the closest one is Carmine Corp, but their end of their schedule looking pretty decent. They should at least be able to make playoffs as well. Again, it just seems to be simply an America's problem, which then in turn, when you and I look back to, I mean, at the start of the podcast, when we were kind of talking about the teams heading potentially to Masters, we were kind of concerned about NA not necessarily send, or Americas, I should say, not necessarily sending the best representation, right? Not sending
Yeah.
NRG, not, some of these others, not sending Leviathan. They looked awful. Is this just more, I guess, my first question, and then you can also talk about the tweet. Do you think this is more of America's readjusting itself in the sense of the cream now truly rising to the top, right? Or is there more validity to the tweet that I'm giving it? I'm kind of curious your perspective.
I think it's kind of both. I think that for Americas, it's kind of the situation of like Apex or ALGS, where we have, I feel like the most competitive region here for Valorant, and I
I
think
think that's
have
fair.
the most like good teams here that like it's not just one or two. It feels like every single team could battle for a championship. So, it is that rigorous nature that like, okay, not every
Most,
team, but
like 8 of them. I get you.
most
I
teams,
get you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it's just even more rigorous, like you talked about, where they don't have that rest. They're coming straight on back, and because you don't have that many matches, you drop one single match, and that literally could decide if you make the major or if you don't. So it's a lot of pressure on these players' shoulders. It's a lot of pressure on the coaches as well that have to make these plans. And if you know what the consistency was, even if your plan was garbage, if you've been winning off of it, if it's been messing things up, if you've been winning off of it, you're gonna keep playing to win because you can't drop any single series here. But I do give validity to the tweet. I think that the season is short. The turnover was very, very quick. And we've seen this before in LCS where again, teams come back, they don't get much of a turnover. And even worse for like League of Legends, you can't learn the new patch. And this was, I feel like, the big part that like Clove is so OP now that like they didn't have time to learn her at all.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I feel like too, when you look at their group, like they are kind of in a tough group, especially with the fact that Crew is 3-0. If Crew would have showed up and went 0-3, and you're like, all right, it's a 4-team race for 3
Yeah.
spots. You also have G2. Maybe let's see how they adjust, after ascending up into the Pro League. Um, but and what's crazy is Sentinels are plus 20 on their round differential. So like it's
Mhm.
not like they've won big in the games that they've won, and they also have kept things relatively close in the games that they've lost. So I think that's why, for me, looking at Sentinels, I'm not completely pressing the panic button just quite yet. I think this is one of those situations where you could also almost look at the fact that I don't think there's enough time in the regular season.
Yeah.
5, 6 matchups to figure out who's going to Masters 2? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense, but it is also the kind of like the scapegoat of like, oh, you're a professional player, like you kind of signed up for this being in the Valorant League. So I think the players they got to step up, they got to go towards this next couple weeks and try and win these matches. But I think it's possibly something we could look at in the future that maybe Valorant needs to take a step back, think that like, I mean, extend out the weeks, give them more time, do something. I know that that's gonna cost them more money to run the season for a little bit longer, but I feel like player health very, very important. And every time we see esports burnout stories of like players are like, I just gonna do it. Wake up at
Yeah.
8 a.m., gotta go to the gym, gotta get on this regimen for esports, practicing double scrim block. I mean, we don't go to bed until midnight, and then it's do the same thing for 7 days a week.
Yeah, let's not forget. So there's the playtime, then there's the scrims, and then there's the VOD review after that, right? And then you talked about still trying to take about your physical and mental health as well. It does take a toll. So, question to you then. So, we know that for Shanghai, there are 3 teams that go, right? Do you think that both VCT Masters from the last LAN, do you think neither Loud nor Sen make it?
I think it's plausible. I think that Sentinels will pick it up. I think Sentinels starting to look better and better, starting to get back in towards that flow. And like you said, they've had some really clean maps, and they've also been relatively close in their map differential on the maps that they have lost. So I feel like they're picking it back up. I think Sentinels is going to make it, but I would have to say I think one of them is going to miss. And honestly, to see even some of the teams that we weren't expecting, like the Cloud9 roster to step up and go crazy, the Crew roster to step up and go crazy, I think it's an exciting time for them too.
Well, what's kinda crazy is I think because of the way that next week lines up, I think for sure one of these 2 teams misses it. Right now, Sentinel's sitting in 5th at 2-2. Loud still has 1 more game this week, and it's crazy. I would normally say
Yeah,
it's a gimme, it's against
yeah,
Crew. Crew's
yeah.
3-0 though, so you don't know. And if Crew go to 0 or if Crew win that, Loud essentially needs to win out, and Sentinel and Loud play next week. They
Yeah.
play or the 27th, so that's actually this weekend on Saturday. So I wouldn't say it's like a good chance. I'd say it's a very good probability that one of the 2 teams doesn't make it. And because of how tough Group Alpha is, they might not neither of them might even make playoffs. We're not even talking about not making Shanghai. We're talking 6 teams from Americas making playoffs, and your 2 top teams from the preseason tournament that sent teams over to the first Masters aren't even in your top 6. That's wild.
It's very wild, and it's kind of like we said, it's harder as well when you look at the other team's path. Specifically, focusing on Cloud9, you look at their 2 remaining matchups. They got Furia and MIBR. Both are 0-3 right
Easy.
now. So,
Yeah.
like, they're probably in. They're locked. Like, who else? Crew is already 3-0 as well. If they beat Loud, if Loud can't step up to beat them, you're pretty
Crew's
much
got
given a
the
spot for
hardest
them
road,
too.
though.
That's true. That's
I
true.
mean, they've got to play Loud, so which Loud
Yeah.
shows up, right? Because then after that, they play 100 Thieves. Again, though, which 100 Thieves shows up? Because
True.
100 Thieves has kind of been up and down a little bit. At their 2-1, they are only plus 12 on the round differential. These last couple of weeks of VCT America is going to be awesome. It's going to really be fun to see how the rest of the playoffs kind of shapes up. But before we move on from VCT, do you have anything you want to talk about from other regions?
Not 100%. I feel like America's is kind of getting the most exciting right now because like you
Yep.
said, we have the front runners that are finding their form in all the other regions is what it feels like. And again, like I said, it feels like North America is the most competitive right now.
I do feel like I kind of have to at least give one shout out over
Yep.
in VCT Pacific. I've been hard on Bleed all year
Yep.
round.
Yep.
They finally beat DFM, who's won like 1 game in VCT in 2.5 years. Congratulations on punching down, baby. Way to get yourself your first win. Good job, Bleed. Um, they are going to have a tough road, though. I do got to say real quick, just for the rest of them, they're 1-3. They're minus 22 on their round differential, and they do have 2 games left. DRX and PRX. Talk about a very rough way to close your
Yes.
season sitting at 1-3. So I don't think Bleed's making playoffs. And before we move on, I do actually want to talk one thing in EMEA, just because if you aren't watching EMEA, the top of it is very, very interesting. Like you mentioned, I do think I have to agree in the fact that like for America's probably like the deepest league. But when you look at like the top, I would say it's not much different than NA. It's
Yeah.
like maybe 5, 6 for VCT
Yeah.
EMEA. You got a bunch of great teams. Fnatic's finally back into true form. Navi is finally off fraud watch. Artist not so much. Foot's looking pretty solid. So you got a lot of good teams that you can pay attention to. So if you aren't watching VCT EMEA during the weekdays while you're at work, let's be honest, your boss won't care. Just put it up on your side monitor because it's been a lot of fun to watch.
It's been awesome. And again, like we said, all podcasts and all throughout the day, it's a great time to be an esports fan. And honestly, I've been seeing all the memes queue of like players trash talking each other. They're like, you be careful about that trash talk, you're gonna be relegated to bleed. So, definitely the memes are flying out as well. But I'm excited to see the rest of Super Week. I'm excited to see how things go. But we got some ALGS to talk about.
We have ALGS to talk about now. We did do a lot of our like kind of too early story conversations last week, predictions, stories that we would like to see. I think maybe we'll retouch on that a little bit more next week because we'll be recording before
Sure.
the actual start of things. But I did want to touch on a couple of points on ALGS this week. One thing we already have talked a lot about the importance of like mental health for our esports competitors, right? I
Yeah.
wanted to get your opinion on his Watson leaving ALGS right before LAN and for people who maybe aren't paying attention or haven't been able to catch up for ALGS, it's not like Furia was a team that wasn't expected to do well at LAN. This is a team that has been performing well, and even with all of that, Watson decides to step away. Kind of want to get your thoughts.
I mean, I feel like it's just a classic case of burnout that like he's a really good content creator, he's a really good player, but also he was trying to try and divide his kind of thoughts between both, trying to find his angle between both, and then also as he kind of talked about that like it wasn't what he enjoyed anymore. So like it wasn't the game that he used to play, the game that he used to love anymore. So it sucks that like the lane is right there. It sucks for his teammates that have to, have that replacement step on in. But at the same time, like I've seen it happen so many times before where players it's just the burnout factor playing at that high level for too long.
Well, remember, this is also a player who had initially like left ALGS,
Sure.
right? And I think there was this whole concept of, maybe playing alongside his, BFF Keon, which if you don't know their story, Honestly, like, you need to go watch some videos on it. It'll tear at your heartstrings a little bit. But I do gotta say, they have been performing pretty well with Vaxlon,
Yeah.
replacing in during scrims. Obviously, scrims are scrims, take them for what they're worth. They have also been performing a little bit better this week as well, which to keep in mind is when a lot of people are already in the area, so there's not so much as
True.
far as the ping discrepancies. So I don't think Furia is, like, so far off the table even with the replacement there. But I don't know if there's been an announcement of a replacement of a player yet. Pretty sure there hasn't been, but I want to get your idea. Unfortunately, this one hits hard. Unfortunately, this one hits home like a little bit tough for me because I'm a big Legends gaming fan. I was a
Yeah.
huge Black Hand fan last year. Strafing Flames my IGL. I'll just say it. That's my homie. Love you, bro. Um, Unfortunately, Easy Flash, uh, no visa.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we always seem to catch a couple of them, especially over from the Pacific when it comes to, events, especially in NA, right? And I gotta say, I think Easy Flash is arguably one of the best fraggers in the world, period, right
Yeah.
now. Definitely one of the best ones, MNK. I do think that this Legends gaming squad with the duo of Strafing Flame and Player K, because of their duo synergy, they've been around as a duo for quite a while. Let's not forget they just kind of reformed at the end of Black Hand's run. They had kind of split across
True.
after the chicken sandwich split. But I want to get your thoughts on who would make a great fit as a sub for this Legends gaming squad heading into Los Angeles.
The sub does the sub have to be from the region that
No,
they okay. So, I mean, honestly, like, I would say there are a lot of good, like, North American pickups. There are a
agreed.
lot of teams, like, again, like we talk about North America, same as VCT, Americas is one of the most competitive regions for ALGS. So, I think one of those teams that were maybe 12, 13, 14 could go in. And honestly, like, thinking of like meat lovers or somebody like Tech being able to step on in and bring that hype, that'd be super awesome to see.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a couple of big names out there. I think the biggest one that stands out to me is a player that we've seen pop off in the past in that sub position, although at that time was playing for an EMEA squad. But I think Ramboski would
Yes.
fit in perfectly with this squad. You let Strafing Flame make your calls. You have player K, who's just literally one of the best anchors in the world. I don't know if I can give him the best anchor because, like, there's always Biggie, and you kind of gotta
Yeah.
you gotta compete with that. But I don't think player K is very far behind. I think you allow those two. I think Ramboski, who is a pure fragger at heart and one of the best to do it. I think you allow him to do his best thing, like his best work, and just go in and just simply listen to comms. I think he would fit in with that squad so good. Granted, he is a controller. It would get
That's
rid of
true.
the
That's
whole,
true.
triple M and K appeal. But I do feel like playing style wise would fit in so nice.
And like you said, he has that experience in that sub role before. He's played that role before he's played the part. But honestly, if you're looking for somebody to sub, again, I'm looking towards those teams in North America that have experience that
Mhm.
just barely didn't make it. So either Optic or like Xset. You take any one of those three players that have experience on land. Specifically, I think Nocturnal out of all those six
Mm.
would be a really good fit, even though, like you said, might change up the style and play. You have that experience of being able to be on land, calm things down for the team when they get crazy, and just shoot your shots.
Nocturnal, or I would even say potentially like a dropped,
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah,
Would probably fit in pretty good with that squad as well. It would be fun to watch. I don't know if they've made an announcement yet. And the other thing about Ramboski is I think I saw him show some interest for some other people who were looking for subs earlier on in the process. So I don't know if maybe he's already picked up. But if they get hooked up and together as a squad, I mean, it's gonna be a match made in heaven, in my opinion. We did see this past weekend Split 2 PLQs got wrapped up. So we got the rest of our field set for split number 2. But I couldn't help but notice that it didn't feel like there was a bunch of hype around it. I feel like right now everyone's looking forward to LAN, right? So, do you feel that split 2 PLQs should be after LAN, even if it's just the finals, right? Like the following weekend,
yeah.
which would then unfortunately cut into some of those teams' time to prepare for like this upcoming split, or do you think it's in a good spot where it's at now? I'm kinda curious.
I think it's okay, but I also think it's a little bit weird. I mean, for the players specifically, like it's great timing, right? You have all this build up, you have the great practice, but for the fans, and it's kind of For ALGS, who do you want to focus on? Because for the PLQs, are you trying to focus on the players or are you trying to focus on the fans? I mean, it's hard to always make that delineation. I think probably you should focus on the players because again, you have that big event that you're looking forward to.
Right.
So like all that hype is already there. So I would have to say keeping it the same, but also I could see something where you move it towards after and the players actually get way more time to actually scrim during that time, way more time to prepare for the actual PLQs, and then they get less time to prepare for like if they actually make it on in.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very weird, like, way to try and balance because let's be honest, other than elevate this
Yeah.
split, we normally don't see teams make that jump from PLQ to going to LAN anyways, right? Like, they usually kinda have to figure some stuff out for a while, and I think a lot of us were kind of confused when Elevate didn't get an invite anyway. So, like, they kinda break the rule on both sides of that. Um, so when we talk about is it not quite as fair for the competitors? I definitely understand that, but I think when you look at ALGS particularly, a competitive gaming league that has a thing like match point, which is very much driven towards the spectator over the competitor. I feel like if you could build more hype for the upcoming split after LAN by then having PLQs after that, I think it's a better way for them to maintain the hype for their league, grow the eyes and the attention on it. Me personally, but I don't hate it where it's at because again, let's be honest, it's not like it's going to ever meet the same sort of eyes that get brought on to, like, actual pro play, right? But I can't help but wonder if that would at least help it a little bit.
We'll have to see. I mean, I think that changes could be made, and I don't know. We'll have to see if the players like complain enough. I think that's the biggest thing. Like
Right.
we don't actually know. Like are the players actually sad about this? Are they okay with it? Whatever. So we'll see after this PLQ if it does kind of move around. But as you talked about, we got the big one coming on up, and I'm excited to get into some more Apex.
Yeah, we got coming up in just a couple weeks. We'll talk a little bit more next week since obviously that episode will be releasing after the land's already started, but we're gonna be recording it before it starts. We'll kind of do like a last little bit of predictions on next week's episode. And I know y'all are probably like, well, wait, y'all have gone through RLCS, ALGS, VCT, and this thing's only like a half hour. I know, I get it. But we want to introduce a new segment to y'all. I'm super excited. This is something that actually I've been wanting to do for a little bit. I know Llama's been super excited about it as well. You ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
You
I'm
wanna
ready.
tell the
No,
you wanna tell the people?
no.
No, he does not wanna tell the people. Alright, so guys, we wanna start this new segment. It's called Stacked Decks, alright? So Stacked Decks is this time around, we're gonna be building, like, the perfect esports production, but maybe in the future for Stacked Decks, maybe we'll build, like, the perfect, like, COD well, maybe not COD team, but, like, the
There we
perfect
go.
ALGS team from our region and stuff like that. Basically, Stacked Decks is stacking the deck to make the best thing possible. So for here, we wanna build an esports production that's so exciting that you literally just want to like tap that thing into your vein. You know what I'm saying? That just gets you going on a weekend. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of break this down by the different positions that are in an esports production. Because in case you guys don't know, Llama and I know because we kind of work in the industry. There's a lot that goes in as far as with an esports production. Now we're not gonna be talking so much as far as the back end stuff, observers and stuff. By the way, observers, producers, directors, we love you guys. Maybe for a different one. You know what I mean? As far as for this one, we're just talking about camera facing talent. All right. So we're going to do two stage hosts just because I do like to have an A and a B. And then we're going to go over our interviewer because the interviewer could have technically been like stage host B. All right. Then we're going to go over desk host. We're both going to give y'all two of them. We're going to go over analyst. We're going to go over four of them because usually for most productions, you have like two duos of analysts that go back and forth with the host, right? So that's kind of where we got that number from. And then I think we both decided on the number of forecasting duos just to kind of keep things nice and easy. We're going to talk about the crowd, talk about the production. Again, I said we weren't going to talk about the observers and stuff individual, but just the production as a whole. And then also set the stage and location as well. So I think this should be a lot of fun. I hope y'all are ready. I'm ready because I think when I see my list, man, I see it and I get so excited. I just want to tap their stuff in my veins, man. Um, so let's start off with stage host. All right, because I do think when you look at the stage host role, it's an often overlooked role because
Mhm.
it's not on camera much, right? But it is usually the person who helps warm up the crowd before the show starts, or at least is part of the start of the show, has to bring the energy and always has to have that energy, right? So for my stage host, for me, I think about the energy that we always get from Stacks with Rocket League, right? I mean, the man just has a voice to be on the mic. If you don't follow him on social media, he's the voice of Maine hockey. He does like everything for, I think, one of the colleges up there and a couple of high school, like sports wise. Like the dude's just meant to be on a mic and you can feel his energy through it. Has to definitely be my stage host A.
I'm mirroring you. I'm taking Stacks as well, man. I
Bro's
mean,
got the talent, man.
he's got the voice, and like you said, the stage host is such an interesting role because like we as casters, we kind of get a little bit of a warm up, like
Right.
where they are the first ones that you usually see. Like usually there's a little bit of a segment and it goes straight to them. It's the always the lights are black and then one single light on Stacks every single time. So I think he is probably the best stage host in the entire world. He's got the voice
Facts.
for it, like you said, and I would love to see him on other games other than Rocket League too.
I feel like the Stacks voice, just because he does such a good job of building the hype and the
Oh yeah.
anticipation, I agree. I think would be great on so many other titles. Um, I don't know if he would have an interest in other titles simply because of his busy schedule.
Mhm.
Otherwise, again, I know he does so much for the university
Yeah.
up there. He got to cast, I think it was the University of Maine's female team that qualified for
Mm.
the NCAA women's tournament, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
So he's like always casting. So kind of it makes sense why he's so good at his
Yeah.
craft because he's literally doing it across so many different types of venues, right? But I'm kind of curious since we both had the same stage host A, hit me with your stage host B.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, but this is a stage host who started in LCS, actually got cut because of budget restrictions, and then had some time, I think, in VCT, but it was just kind of a one-off thing. And this is Dash, who I think
Okay, yeah, yeah.
brings a lot of energy. I think is very knowledgeable, but is that high level caster that like also brings that not only the stage host mentality, but also kind of brings that knowledge in.
Brings in the knowledge. Yeah, I do really like Dash. I think I'm kinda mad at myself for overlooking that one. That's actually a really good stage host B. For me, stage host B, I went more in the realm of a stage host that we see a lot in the shooter venue.
Yeah.
Brings in a nice little energy. I'm a big f and we actually got to see him what event did he do ALGS? Split 2 playoffs last year, but Blaze
Oh
works a lot
wow.
doing, like, the Halo events. I think he does some COD too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've always been a big fan of his energy. I don't think got quite the reception at the split two playoffs because that crowd was kind of whack, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But I always love the energy that he brings to stage. That would probably have to be my stage host B.
Right. I mean, that's a good one too. I think, like you said, kind of brings that different style that when we're
Yes,
talking about like Stacks and Dash, they're two kind of like they're different, but they're also kind of from the same genre-ish. Where if you're talking about like shooters, it's a whole different level that you're bringing in, especially with like COD and Halo as well. So bringing in a different angle is always nice, and I think, like you said, having those hey, those stage hosts are nice, but also to be able to go to the side and have an interviewer is nice. Who'd you pick for your stage interviewer?
so my interviewer, I have to go the route of CS. We saw Banks actually come into ALGS for split two champs in
Yep.
Raleigh, which is where I got to see him live. But what Banks brings, and I almost put him as stage host, but we did a stage host interviewer anyways because he kind of does both for CS.
Yeah.
But like his vibe in an interview, it always just seems so like, hey, we're just the homies. Let's talk about some games. Let's talk about the game he just played. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like very formal, even when he's got like dappered up, suit, booted and suited. It never feels overly like it's not too official. It just feels like it allows players to open up, and I think it allows for really good interviews as well.
Well, he's a good interviewer, and that's why I stole him too. I'm picking James Banks as my interviewer as well. Like you said, he brings a really good vibe. I think his questions are always really good as well. That like they're knowledgeable, they get good answers, but at the same time, like you said, they're not too forward. They're not like he doesn't sound stuck up. He doesn't sound like he's prying for the information. It just like sounds like he's always having a conversation with like his best friend.
It's such a great like it's when you listen in on it, it's such an easy listen. Like I feel like sometimes you'll have people who are very insightful as like that interviewer role, but it still feels very much like a let me talk, you talk,
Yeah.
let me talk. Whereas just Banks, it just feels like the homie sitting back playing like casuals, talking about the last ranked game that they played. Like it comes off across and it's very well done. So I'm glad that we agreed there. I already know that we agree on these next two. So I think we're just
Okay.
gonna take one and we're gonna talk. All right. So
Okay.
I see your list. I'm gonna let you start at the top of your list with analysts because I want or with not analysts with the actual desk, the desk host. So who's your top one on the desk host?
So I have two desk hosts. I think the first one who has more versatility in a lot of different titles that we've seen is Golden Boy, that we've seen across a lot
Yeah.
of different titles. We've seen him actually sometimes even in that interview role. He
Yep.
knows how to ask questions, and that's the nice part because like that's what you want as a desk host. You want them to be able to ask questions, get the answers out of your analysts, and then be able to kind of control the flow of the conversation.
I think the controlling the flow is the big thing, right? Because he does such a good job of keeping all of his parties on the desks involved, even when it is more than just the two like analysts there, and maybe they have a guest along in with him. Like you'll see multiple times where he does a very good job of kind of sharing the mic. Whereas I feel like other hosts sometimes tend to just go to their like most popular of the three and kind of keep that back and forth going. And you mentioned Golden Boy. Um, I think for anybody who gets into the casting business because of how long he's been in it, like where Golden Boy's at in his career is like literally, and no pun intended, like the golden standard, right? The fact that you can work all summer long across so many different titles and you're just going from host to host to host to host. And it's like big events. It's not like you're going to a state finals here and some rink-a-dink little,
Yeah.
well, not rink-a-dink land. I don't want to make you no disrespect. Sorry. I'm sorry. But you know what I mean? Like it's always like the championships of like tier one like titles, and Golden Boy is always there.
He always is. And it feels like, he's in that golden stage. I feel like he could break into possibly some other titles. Like we haven't seen him on like League of Legends or something, or like something that is considered like one of the greatest titles of all time. But he's still finding work all the way around. He's still being very versatile. Like we both said, he can play that interview role. He can play the stage host. I bet if you threw him a mic on the cast, he could probably do that as well. I think we've seen that a couple times on the B stream. So I think providing a lot to the analyst desk is very key.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's not forget too, he does a podcast, and now the name of it's slipping my mind. It's a wrestling podcast with a former wrestler who does some like shoutcasting. It's slipping my mind. I hate myself for it. Hopefully, we can slap it on the screen for the video. But literally, when you talk about how diverse he is, right? The other one that I had for desk host, because I had Golden Boy. He's like again like the golden standard for me. When I said desk host, Golden Boy right up in my first spot. It's like no questions. And then two was tough for me for a second
Yeah.
because I mean, there's a lot of good talent out there. But then when I really thought about it, my number 2 is someone who I have, like, watched for quite some time. Anyone who's been around hanging out with your boy from through my streaming career, back when your boy was over on Mixer pushing for Paladins partnership and, like, watching the Paladins Pro League every week with my community, I've gotten to see, like, the glow up of Rain Day and see, like, him go through everything. And one, another, like, just buttery smooth voice. He's got the charisma for the mic. Now, he's the host of one of my favorite leagues to watch, which is ALGS, which is again, it's been so fun to just watch his glow up. I feel like Rain Day could host anything. Definitely has to be my number 2 behind Golden Boy.
Yeah, he's my number 2 for that same reason. I know I watch a ton of Apex. It was my kind of second esport I got into playing after, watching League of Legends for so long. But you talk about kind of that step up to Apex, but also he started kind of as that caster role and still
Yep.
does some casting from time to time. And that's what I really like. Again, the versatility in that role is very key. That like it's not only just that you can ask questions, you can have the ability to, talk smoothly to others, but he already had some of those connections built of like his duo when like Fallout was on the desk and not casting. Like that was the greatest moment of all time, and like see them two talking back and forth. So he's got the charisma, he's got the smooth voice, like you said, but he's got that connections to those on the desk as well.
Yeah, his connection, and it's just again the way he goes about it, his business. Like I'm always paying attention, man. From back in his Paladins day to work it up, doing stuff with the Madden. It's never mattered the title. He always puts on a banger of a show. Rain Day definitely has to be up there. All right, let's go to analysts here. I'm gonna still try and make sure we can try and squeeze this thing in under that hour, so we're gonna kind of keep a good pace here through analysts and duos and stuff. We got 4 of them.
Okay.
Curious if your first one, because I think we share it.
So
No. Yeah,
Kind of.
but kind of, yeah.
So what I went with is two analysts in quotations and then like one statistician. So like
Okay.
kind of two more people that know the game, can talk about it really well, and then one person that like brings in some really good stat information as well, which I think you kind of have too. So my first one, I'll kind of go down towards it because I think you have it on your list too. But I think T-Bates,
Yeah.
fantastic in Rocket League, kind of brings some comedy relief as well to the desk.
It's interesting because I've heard from so many people, like, on different podcasts, and I thought it for the longest time too. I thought he was playing a character. I really did, just being the
Mhm.
very much, the NA, native,
Yep.
knowing that EU is kind of the big region right now. But apparently, it's just him being very passionate about what he does. And uh, man, when you talk about professional yappers, that boy sits at the top of the list. He's going to make a very good lawyer one day. I know he's going to Georgetown Law, but definitely has to. He sat at the top of my analyst list. I feel like if you need somebody with the charisma, someone who obviously does a very good job of breaking down the game and breaking down the numbers, but then also does a very good job of like taking a different like
Yeah.
view of it. Almost kind of reminds me sometimes of his views. Like way he goes about conversation remind me of like if for our like sports fans of like Colin Coward talks a lot about a lot of the big like stories, but kind of from a different, like,
Yeah.
skew of things, which is very fun.
It's really cool. I think that, like you said, as much as like in the textbook of casters that we all like try and flip through, like page one is like don't have bias, like be completely unbiased, but
I
like
disagree.
his style, like you said, of like bringing in not only the passion for his home region, but also breaking it down to different ways, is really really nice to see. So I think that it'd be cool to again see him on different esports and kind of see how like again for Rocket League that doesn't have as many like changes in sort of like heroes or champions or whatever being picked. Like it'd be really cool to see him like break down all that other knowledge.
It would be really fun to watch. I think someone else who's really good as far as breaking down, like, the knowledge when you talk about the different if there were different legends and things like that was my number 2. It's actually a newer face when you look at kind of across. I think it actually might be the newest face when I look across all of my names. But for I went to ALGS for this one, and it's my homie Dia.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I feel like every time one, I love his casting. I always when I talk to him, I love his storytelling. I feel like he's always ahead of the game about the way that the thing's gonna break down. But when you listen to like his analytical mind, Dia is just I don't know on a different level, especially for someone that is like still very new in the scene. Feels like he's been around forever. Also, maybe Dia has a special place in my heart because of taking time out to chat to me about some ALGS casting in Raleigh. But every time I tune into Dia, I feel like I learned something, and I just like he puts on a class, man. He really does.
Yeah, and I think we go back to that versatility. You look at the Dia Zephyr pair that got kind of picked up
Yeah.
together. Like, we'll talk about pairs a little bit later, but I'm not putting that as like the best pair of all time. But like, they are such a good pickup. They work so well together, and specifically Dia, like you said, being able to break down that information and kind of give it to you in very bite-sized pieces. Let the viewer understand kind of the stories and the stakes that are on the line for all of it. So I 100% agree. I'm going Apex for my second one too. I chose Onset.
Onset is a very good one. I'm a big fan of Onset. That's my twin. You know what I mean? So
Oh, I meant to write Q. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, Onset's again another one of those that always does a very good job of like how he breaks down a game. And he's one of those that is able to do it across multiple titles, whether it's ALGS, whether it's Halo, a very analytical mind. I love that pick dog. It's funny, I don't know if I would have thought about him there just because I normally see him as more of like a caster, but really
Yeah.
good analyst.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to kind of go with. Like, I want to try out like certain people. Like you said, he's more of a caster. You often see him more in that role, but I think he breaks down the information really well. I think he'd be
Mhm.
awesome on the analyst desk.
I think he'd be great. I think another one that I love talking about when let's stay on the analyst desk for a minute, and I'm gonna go away from either title we talked so far. I actually got myself 4 different titles on my analyst desk. I did want to bring a little different flavor. Mimi
Okay.
over on the analyst desk from VCT. I feel like when you listen to her, one, I love her comedy, like, when you listen to, like, her on the podcast, like, with Plaid Chat and stuff, is hilarious. Yeah, I think you have to have, like, an understanding for, like, that more, like,
Yeah.
dry sort of comedy, but she is hysterical to me. But also very analytical. She's got a brilliant brain when it comes to breaking down things over on the Valorant side of things. And it was when I first started thinking analyst, the first two popped in my brain pretty quick. Mimi was not very far out for that. I mean, I think very deserving to sit on that analyst desk for a dream esports production.
And when we're talking about like this is my person that is a statistician, right? That Mimi brings in all these different statistics, but also again ties them into the stories of the competition. That like
Mm.
brings the players' stories to life through these like numbers on a random page, and does a really good job, like you said, bringing in the comedy, bringing in lots of different things towards it. So I like it, and like I said, I kind of fill her in that statistician role.
So who do you got as your next analyst then?
So I'm going statistician as well. I think for my third one, and this one I'm actually going back to League of Legends. This is someone that has never, I believe, casted in her entire life, but has been on the analyst desk for almost all of LCS. This is Emily Rand, who kind of does that same role as Mimi, but does it on the LCS desk.
Yeah, I was gonna say I recognize the name. Admittedly, if you follow the podcast, you know I'm only kind of just getting into League, so the name looked familiar. I was not very familiar with the game, but I'll definitely need to make sure I peep it.
Yeah, I mean, she brings a lot. I think that one of the best analytical minds, I think, in all of esports, at least to me personally. So filling in that statistician role, but I think you've got one final person on your desk
I
there.
do. I got one final person left on my desk. I told y'all I was keeping it fresh with 4 different titles. We're going over to CS for this one. I got to go with my boy Pimp. I felt like maybe hasn't been as prevalent on desks as of recently. I think it's kind of gone more the content creator role if I'm not mistaken. Um but I again, another one of those like personalities that I feel like just fits and I think would fit in some other games as well.
I think so too. I mean, CS is such like a versatile game that I feel like the
Yeah.
pipeline from CS to other esports has really been there. That you see so many different people starting in CS, and has so many open casting slots with like ESEA, main, advanced, and everything going on. So to see that pipeline to other games would be nice, but I think that he's got just such a great voice. Like,
Yeah, I think the other thing too, when you look at CS, you mentioned like that pipeline from it. I think it's because of the way the thing breaks down. Once the
yeah,
action starts, you have to be good at very quickly to
yep.
like be able to explain what's on your screen. But then there is that 30, 45, 50 seconds, 60, sometimes 70 seconds, where you're just more painting the picture. So you kind of get a good balance of the two, which can kind of be taken across a couple of different there. Um, do you have one more?
So I do have one more. I didn't write down, and then I have a guest as well. So I'm taking Chronicler, who is another League of Legends caster slash analyst. He mostly works in other regions, but usually is on like the world's broadcast. So I think he
Okay.
brings a really good mind, and like he does the English broadcast for I think the Korean league. So like brings kind of their stories to us over here in America.
All right. I love it. I love it. And then you said you had a guest.
I do. So I kind of cheated this one because this is a
I'm
player who
always cheating.
may not speak the most English in the
Okay.
world, but it is Faker. And in an ideal world where if you have a desk that can kind of speak the language with him, I feel like he's just a really interesting player to kind of bounce ideas off of at the top level of like, oh, what did this feel like as a player? Like you as a player, you've
Okay.
won so many titles. What is this player feeling like right now?
Right. What are they going through with the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations of esports? I can see where you're going with that. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. I love it. I love it. So we've gotten to go the desk. We've got to talk about the stage. Of course, you gotta have the storytellers, man, when you're actually in game. So we're gonna go our casting duos. I'm gonna let y'all know that my first two are active casting duos together, because that was one thing that we could do. My third is going to be a duo. You mentioned how you're putting people in like different roles. So it was two people from different games that I thought would make a good pair, and then a different sort of they're not an official casting duo. Maybe on like a B stream or something. Anyways, so for my casting duo, my first one, it was someone you had mentioned earlier in Onset. I think Gaskin and Onset together, like their synergy, their chemistry. When I listen to ALGS, I know there are others who have really good chemistry, like the whole Dia and Zephyr combo. Man, when we had the Fallout Vicky Kitty combo, dog, I love that one in action as well. But when you listen to Gaskin and Onset, they do such a very good job of meeting the peaks and the valleys well.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, when you look at like a Fallout and Vicky Kitty. I feel like we're just going on this ride where we're riding the high for the whole 20, 25 minutes of the game. They're both meeting the same energy, whereas they do a very good job of kind of going through the peaks
Yeah.
and valleys. You have the, analytical of onset. You've also got Gaskin, who's like your numbers guy as well. For me, they're a casting duo that has to go on the list.
I think, like you said, they're a current casting duo. They have proven themselves, right? Like
Mhm.
they have stepped in from other arenas, proven themselves in Apex, and I feel like if they are one of the duos that are going to stay, if you had to like cut it down to just one duo, like it's gonna be a hard decision, but like man, they have so much good back and forth, so much good, like you said, pickup and recognition of each other's like flow and how they want the broadcast to actually flow together. So I feel like I definitely agree with that one. For most of my caster pairs, I actually like broke apart different pieces of different places just as a heads up. So my number one casting duo is Llama 77 and your boy Q.
Hey, you know what? We're looking for RLCS split number two, baby. No matter the region, we got to produce that we can bring along with us too. We usually keep them tied up in the closet. So, um, no, but for real, who's your first one?
Okay, but for real, so I'm breaking apart, like I said, I talked about Zephyr earlier. I mean, kind of a guy that I've looked up to, helped actually me get into casting at the early stages. The duo pair with him and Dia is really awesome, but I think another caster that I really, really look up to is Captain Flowers. I mean, one of the
Mm,
best to do it in the entire world on the World League of Legends stage, does the North America broadcast. So Zephyr and Captain Flowers, not only because I think they both bring really fun and good energy, but
that
they
energy
also
would be fire.
they both come from League of Legends, so they'll be able to vibe over that too.
I like that pairing. Yeah, you mentioned as soon as you said it, I was like, "Oh, that energy. That would
Yep.
be a pretty hype desk, man." I definitely gotta say, I gotta agree with that one. I'm a big fan. I love it. I love it. Like I said, I had one later on that I kind of put together some different titles together. But for my second, we're going to VCT, and it is another active duo. And again, I think it's a duo where I think some people might not put them as the top from their title, but I do, and it's Brennan Shide's show. I think the
Yeah.
two of them again, a very good duo that does a good job of going through the peaks and valleys. They do such a one when they do their side content can be
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
They're like their comedic relief can be so good, but when you need to get serious, like they know their stuff. And I think that's what allows them to have this very good balance in this ride that when you go along for that with them for a best of 3, you can get some comedy in between in the timeouts. You can get some real good analytical breakdown in between the rounds, and they're just phenomenal at painting the picture as well.
They really are. And I think when you talk about like Valorant as an esports in general, I feel like, I mean, we know it's one of the harder esports to actually cast because of like the breakpoints in the rounds, the silence that you have to use in your casting. And they've absolutely mastered it. They know how to talk about the esport, they know how to perfectly display that to the audience. And then, like you said, they add that comedic relief factor to make sure we're breathing, we're laughing as well.
So give me your number 2, Llama. We got to keep this train moving.
We'll keep on chugging along, and I'm going back to Apex, and this is
Okay.
kind of a past duo. I don't know if they ever really stuck together, but I'm pulling Rayande from my desk. I'm using him twice. I know I'm cheating again, but I'm taking Rayande, and we're bringing back Fallout.
The Miami Vice duo. Yeah, the two of them back when they do the button-down shirts. Honestly, I love it. We talked earlier, Rain Day. I'm a big fan of Fallout. I don't even know where to start with
Yeah,
Fallout, man. And I know Fallout's had to like take a step away because of his like professional, like he's got a big boy job. He can't
literally.
be doing literally can't be doing this stuff with games no more. But what he's done across so many different titles. I mean, bro can literally bring hype to the big buck hunting championship of the like world championship, man. Like literally can make anything sound fun. That's such a fun combo to watch.
Speaking of which, if you're looking for a big buck championship casted duo, don't forget me and Q still available for hire. We'll cast that one right on up. But yeah, like you said, I mean, from the beginning of his career, has just every single time impressed from playing to be on this stage now. And I think just the energy, the professionalism that they bring together is absolutely unmatched.
Yeah, I love that duo. I love that duo. Actually, Fallout's a part of my third duo. So this is that one I was telling you about. I'm taking from two different
Yep.
games, two different feels that I feel like would come together relatively well. So we've got Fallout bringing the energy, alongside Pansy from VCT. The two, and look, hi Pac. I'm sorry, dog. I know you and Pansy, man. You're like it's such an epic duo. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but when I feel like for me, when I put these two together, it just brings it to a whole nother level.
It does, and it's kind of like the Vicky Kitty kind of like esque
Right, for real
energy,
though.
right? Like they kind of have that matching energy, the matching high sort of vibes between each other, and I think Fallout just does a really good job at like matching that laughable energy with anybody. Like we just talked about with Rayande, like usually Rayande a little bit more, he's nice, he smiles, but like with Fallout, he seems like they're the most laughable duo on the block.
So fun story. I'm gonna make it super quick. So
Okay.
I told you I went to ALGS Raleigh, right?
Yeah.
So I was trying to see if I could talk to a couple of casters down there, including T Squared and them, who were still a part of the like casting crew at the time, about getting into ALGS casting. At the time, I was only just doing DBD. This was before I really kind of started like changing up like the repertoire. You know what I mean? Adding to my bag. And even though Fallout was like busy hosting, the whole thing for ALGS Championship, I had messaged him on Twitter and he took time to come find me in the stands and like we chatted a little bit about kind of getting into it. He pointed me towards Dia and Zephyr, where Dia later that weekend talked to me as well. When you talk about just the passion that he has for the industry, we've recently saw him post about helping We the People get ready for the upcoming ALGS lane because he's going to be stage host. Just like the passion he puts back into the esports is, oh, it's amazing.
It's unmatched. And honestly, it's kind of the same thing with me that like all of the Apex Legends casters, and I assume it's with like all the other casters, like they do so well to like just be an open book. Like even for
Right.
Zephyr, like he's like, oh, I'm playing Slither.io. Do you want to call for an hour and talk about cast? I'm like, heck yes, I do. Like he's like, okay, join on in. And so like they're very willing to help out new talent. And it's because they respect their own position, right? They're very comfortable knowing like they are the best, but they also want to see everybody else flourish as always. So I love to see that for sure. I love to see that do. I'm kind of stealing one of your earlier ones in Sideshow, but I'm bringing in Rocket League and I'm bringing in James Bot with them.
Ooh, see, that's another one, man. You put their energy together, James Bond. Ooh, I do like that. That could be a lot of fun. I feel like it's another one of those where like they kind of balance each other out as far as the energy and analytical sort of like approach as well. I think that would be a really, really fun duo. I think these going off title duos are kind of interesting. I would be interested. So, do you feel like that would be more suited for a sporting sort of game like a Rocket League or like a more along the line of a shooter? What are you thinking?
I could see it both. I think more Rocket League though.
Yeah,
I think that again, James Bot very good at what he does in Rocket League, and kind of adding that momentous voice of Sideshow into the mix would be fun.
I love it. I love it. So for my last duo, I wanted to go something a little different because I think what they bring as a casting duo
Okay.
is something that more esports need to do, and that's looking at the B stream from ALGS with Wig and Greek. Not just with all the work that they put in during the split with the watch parties for scrims and everything, but their energy on actual like LAN days. Like, bro, they're like, I think they're usually pulling more viewers than the main channel. Like, that's the type of energy that they bring as the B stream. I think
Yeah.
if you got more team, because like watch parties have become more of a big thing, but when the two of them get together, I would say that it is more of a cast than a watch party because they do have that back
Yeah.
and forth.
They do. I just feel like we have to be a little bit careful. I know like there's been a lot of like in this past week, like questions about like how much do we
Watch party and
invest in
stuff.
these watch parties? Like, is just esports trying to just hire a bunch of free casters to get it done for them, and all they do is just put the stream on and then like say a few words every time there's a break. But at the same time, I think you do need that because for the casual audience, I mean, I know me and you, we enjoy the regular broadcast. We love to see the breakdown. But for somebody that maybe has never watched Apex, just wants a little bit more chill vibe, like these are the guys to do it.
Yeah, I want someone who's just yelling about hype stuff instead of breaking down. I don't want someone getting all analytical about these pixels. No, yeah, again, I do think like that alternative sort of like view is something that's very good for esports. And again, I think because they very much skew more towards pseudo broadcast more so during LAN. Again, I'm more looking towards like their LAN B
Yeah.
stream versus their watch parties. I just think having that alternative sort of mindset would be huge. Give me your number 4 though. because I see we're getting yelled at
Yes.
by our
I
producer. We're
so
gonna have to put him back in the closet.
yeah, we gotta go tie him up, bro. We gotta go put him back in there. But
Hey,
I'm
yo.
going back towards that kind of regular format that we talked about, not more of
Okay.
the B stream, but more of the kind of pulling from different esports. So I have Quick Shot. I don't know if you're familiar with him, another League of Legends caster that works in kind of some of those other regions, and usually again is on some of those world stage broadcasts. And I have him with Uber, who I feel like has been dipping into other titles, has been getting involved in other things other than Overwatch, but has one heck of a voice.
Yeah, Uber's got a very, another one of those voices that you listen to, you're like, "Oh, yeah, he should definitely be like if he's not on radio, he should be casting something," you know what I mean? Or doing voiceover or some sort of work, so I love, love that duo. Now, so we've got qualifier 4 for RLCS this weekend. We've got VCT coming down the home stretch. We're about 2/3 of the way through, and next week will be the last week that we get the chance to talk about ALGS before Los Angeles. I know we're already over an hour. I think we're over an hour and 10 minutes. I see Nick going crazy. Big shout out to him, by the way, for putting up with our crap. Big shout out to him. Before we get out of here, Llama, anything else you got for the people?
No, I mean, make sure if you guys are seeing the YouTube shorts as well, not only subscribe,
Yes.
but make them play through. Hit that like button. Make sure you're following on all the Frost socials. If you want to get yourself involved for our Frost events, make sure and join that Frost Discord. We run that 3v3 Rocket League Mondays. We've got 1v1s, we've got Valorant, we've got Smash, we've got everything going on. And maybe if you guys play so well in that 3v3s, maybe you can show up here in the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, you know what though? We've been seeing for the last like year and a half, 2 years, we've seen some amazing talent come through the Frost 3v3s. We're talking about all the TSM roster individually when they're on pickup squads, omelet, incorrect, you name it. A lot of the newer talent have all played in it. So if you want to play and test your wits and test your luck against the best, make sure you're showing up on Mondays for our Frost Weekly. But you know what, man? We're running late. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Make sure you again, like Llama said, man, every time you see a clip, hit the like, leave a comment as well, and make sure you tell somebody to tell somebody to tell somebody about it. But we're out of here till we catch y'all next week for episode number 10. Let's go. Don't forget, man, with everything crazy going on in the world today, be true, be you, be sincere, game hard and love hard. All right, y'all. That's Llama. I'm Q for the rest of the crew from the front to the back. You have a great rest of your week. Peace.